I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 6 predictions. Lots of good matchups coming your way, but before we get into that, just a quick update on our head-to-head pick'ems game. Callan and I both had a very good week, a week in which Callan hit his upset and I hit my upset and lock. That might be the first time someone has hit their upset and not their lock. We'd have to look back and check on that.
I'm pretty sure first time this season for sure.
Definitely this season. But I ended up putting up 13 total points compared to Callan's only 12 total points. So get one more point of separation and put our totals at me with 53 and Callan with 43. So a straight double-digit 10 lead. But I know myself, and no lead is safe when I'm in the lead because I choke away these games like this constantly. So it should be a battle as the weeks go on here. So now we will jump into our matchups. So starting with the Thursday night football game, another amazing matchup for Jeff Bezos and Amazon Prime with the Commanders heading to Chicago to take on the Bears. And our first split of this week, I have the Bears in this one and Callan has the Commies.
Yeah, I think the Commanders are going to win this one just because that powerful defensive line going up against that weak Bears offensive line. I think it's going to be a long day for Justin Fields in the backfield.
Yep, the Bears offensive line has impressed me, but that was because they started at rock bottom, low as you can go expectations. So pretty much anything over awful would be good, and they are brutally mediocre. But like Callan talked about a little bit last episode, Justin Fields does have that ability to put a team on his back and really just fight through for a win single-handedly. And I think it's going to be a situation where he has to do that against Washington, but it's something that I really think he can do, especially against a shaky Washington team. So moving on, we got our first Sunday game with the San Francisco 49ers heading to Atlanta to take on the Falcons in yet another split with Callan taking the Niners in this one. And I have the Falcons, and they are also marked as my upset. Now, big Mariota supporter. I think that the 49ers are way overrated. I'm a Mariota supporter and a Jimmy G hater, very known. If you've ever seen pretty much any episode, you've heard me talk bad about Jimmy G or good about Mariota. But overall, I think that the Falcons could have and should have beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year if it wasn't for the refs cradling Tom Brady. Last week rather, not last year. But I think that this is a very winnable game for the Falcons, especially with it being in Atlanta. And if they can even put up a decent showing, they should have Kyle Pitts back. I think they got to win here.
Yeah, I don't believe the 49ers are as overrated as everyone thinks. That defense is very good. D'Amico Ryans is a coach in waiting, and he's the 49ers defensive coordinator, and he's done really well with this defense this year. He's turned that something to a funga. The safety from USC. He's got a hell of a name. Yeah. I can't remember his first name, but his last name's Tuafunga, and he's got the same heritage as Troy Polamalu. So he comes from a great bloodline, and I believe that 49ers defense is for real.
Same heritage and hair as Troy Polamalu.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing I will give the Niners is D'Amico Ryan has built a hell of a defense there. Next up, we have an out-of-conference matchup with the New York Jets heading to cold Green Bay to take on the Packers, and another split in this one. I have the Jets, Callan has the Packers.
Yeah, I think that Green Bay will bounce back from their surprising collapse in London when they blew a 14-point lead and let the Giants come back and win it. I think they'll get back to the ground game, focus more on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and not put it so much on Rodgers, who just tried to kind of play hero ball a little bit too much in London last week. And I think they'll lean more on the running game for sure.
Yep, this is a little bit of a shaky pick from me. I'm not overly confident in it, but the NFC side of New York beat the Packers last week. So why not have the AFC side of New York beat them this week? I really like Zach Wilson. I think ever since he came back 2 weeks ago, he has looked solid enough, which hasn't looked great, but he's got a lot of good young weapons around him. And this Jets team is going to be scary as these years go on. But he's playing well enough to complement those weapons around him. The defense is holding up, and they're not facing the best competition, but nevertheless, they're picking up wins with Zach Wilson at the helm. And I think that they pull off another little bit of a New York upset over the Packers this week. So next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings heading down to Miami to take on the Dolphins in another out-of-conference matchup. I have the Vikings in this one, of course, and Callan has the Dolphins as his upset.
Yeah, I think that this is all hinging on Teddy Bridgewater playing, Teddy or Tua. I don't know if Skylar Thompson plays, if they're able to pull it off this victory, but I believe that Teddy will play. As far as I know, he's on track to play, and I think it's going to be a big revenge game for him, and he's going to show up and play against the Vikings very well.
A Teddy revenge game is scary, and the Vikings are notorious for losing to backup quarterbacks, so it is terrifying, shaking in my shoes for this game. But I think that we will be able to pick up a win nevertheless, especially if Skylar Thompson plays compared to Teddy Bridgewater. But we've been playing great in the first quarter and then just mediocre for the rest of the game. So even more than a win, which of course I want to win, but even more than a win, what I want to see from the Vikings this game is just a good, consistent, stellar game every single quarter. Not this roller coaster stuff where we come out hot and lose it, or where we lose it in the third quarter and then have to come back and get a comeback win in the fourth quarter. I just want to play solid all the way through and pick up a comfortable win. That's all I'm asking for. Please, Minnesota. I'm losing years off my life between fantasy and the Vikings and the Iowa Hawkeyes this year. So just give me a nice, comfortable win. That's
Plus, there's always a game where the Vikings just completely shit the bed. This might be that game.
One a season without fail, where we just look beyond awful. It's awful. It
was the Cooper Rush game last year, so
yes.
Maybe this will be the Skylar Thompson game.
Oh, Jesus, don't even say that. Next up, we have another out-of-conference matchup. There's quite a few of these this week, with the Baltimore Ravens heading to New York to take on the Giants, and we got another split here. Callan has the Giants in this one, and I have the Ravens. Now, I am also a notorious hater of Lamar Jackson. I should probably stop being such a notorious hater. I feel kind of bad because these are all amazing athletes and great football players. But I'm not a huge Lamar Jackson fan, to say the least. But outside of him, and even with him, I'll admit it, he's very good. The Ravens just have a stacked roster. Man, I think they're going to be really good this year. I'm pretty sure I've picked them every single week except for when they win against the Bills, which I'll touch on more later. But they're just such a good roster. I pick them pretty much every week for that exact reason, and I got them here again against the Giants.
I think the Giants are for real. Brian Daboll is a prime Coach of the Year candidate. He's got that team with a winning attitude, and I believe that they could really surprise Baltimore here, especially it being in New York. Daniel Jones is playing just well enough to keep his starting quarterback hopes alive, and Saquon Barkley is having a resurrecting year, topping the NFL in rushing right now, and that defense is doing really well.
If Brian Daboll takes the Giants to the playoffs, I don't know how you don't say he wins Coach of the Year. What an effort by him. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, now missing both Matt Rule and Baker Mayfield, heading to Los Angeles to take on the Rams, and yet another split. I have the Panthers in this one, and Callan has the Rams as his lock.
Yeah, I think that this is a team, or the Panthers are a team that's reeling right now. They're losing their head coach, their starting quarterback. They're going with the third stringer with P.J. Walker, and I think that the Rams are just going to be too much for them. Aaron Donald is going to be a tough situation to go against for your first start of the year for P.J. Walker, who has done well in the past, especially in the XFL, but I think that the Rams are just going to be too much for them to overcome.
Yep. Now, when I first made this pick, I didn't know that Baker was going to be out, but nevertheless, I kept it because it is strangely consistent how often it happens that after a team fires their head coach, they go out and they rally the troops and they pick up a win the next week, pretty much regardless of opponent. It happens pretty damn often, much more often than it probably should happen. So I don't trust the Panthers, to say the least, but I'm going to pick them one more week. I've picked them a lot of weeks in a row, and they've always let me down. I'm giving them one more chance now that they have the the fire down below of having a brand new head coach.
This might be the upset of the year if it happens, especially given the circumstances.
Yep. So come on, Carolina, get me one win. Make me happy picking you just for this once. Next up, we have our game of the week with the Buffalo Bills heading to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. And Cal and I both have the Bills in this one. And as I already touched on a little bit ago with the Ravens, outside of the Bills, I think the Ravens have the best. But overall, just looking at the roster, depth, talent, coaching, wherever you want to look at it, I think the Bills have the best roster in the league by far. There's not many teams that can beat them this year outside of fluke games and divisional games, because divisional games are such toss-ups.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the Bills in this one. That's all I got to say. It's going to be a hell of a matchup, kind of a revenge game for Josh Allen after that divisional game last year in the playoffs. So I got the Bills.
Yeah, I believe the Bills get redemption for the playoff loss last year. I think that the way the Chiefs played on Monday night shows that they're very vulnerable, that they are vulnerable to deep shots, which are something that the Bills take often. And I believe that Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis are going to have huge games against this Chiefs defense.
Yep, Chiefs are struggling without Hill. It's noticeable. Next up, we got the Cowboys heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles, and Cal and I both have the Eagles in this one.
Yeah, I think that this is where the winning streak ends for Cooper Rush. This is where the winning streak ends for him. This is in Philadelphia. It's going to be a tough environment. The Eagles might be the best team in the NFC right now. Jalen Hurts is playing like a superstar, and that defense is playing fast and very aggressive. And the way they have a running back by the committee with Boston Scott, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, the Eagles are very well put together from top to bottom.
Yep, if you just look through the starters, not quite the depth, some depth, but mostly it's through the starters. I think it's very arguable the Eagles have the best roster in the NFC right now, and I just don't think Cooper Rush is going to be able to keep up. If Cooper Rush comes out here and beats the Eagles in Philadelphia, I know they paid Dak a lot of money, but there's going to be some talks about if Dak even needs to start. I don't know how you don't start him paying that much money. But nevertheless, I don't think we're going to even have that conversation.
Well, there's no need to rush him back, and there's no pun intended there. But there's no need to rush him back with the way that Cooper has been playing. I mean, it's just not necessary. With your team winning, why not ride the hot hand, especially while your other quarterback heals his broken hand?
I say let Rush play till he loses.
Yeah.
And then once he loses, Dak gets his chance back. And then finally, for Monday Night Football, we have the Broncos heading to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. Cal and I both have the Chargers in this one. I got them as my lock. Pretty much just domination, not much to talk about there. So we'll jump past that and look at the first teams on bye. This is the first week of the NFL this season with bye weeks. And we got the Lions, Raiders, Texans, and Titans on bye this week. So that was our episode and our predictions for NFL Week 6. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. But until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.